Good evening to everybody, and thanks for clicking on to the Thursday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. I hope you're all safe and well wherever you are. And yeah, it is a rather blustery one out there, especially the further northwest you go over the UK. We've got a pretty deep low that is passing to the northwest of Scotland overnight tonight. We're seeing a real squeeze in the isobars, meaning that we could see winds in excess of 70 miles per hour, maybe stronger through the overnight period tonight. This is the current setup over the next 5 days, according to GFS Ensemble. We do have a strong ridge extending up into the North Pacific, Gulf of Alaska, northwestern Canada, and in turn we have got a trough that is extending from the Canadian archipelago all the way down into the southeastern United States. Now, with this setup in the Atlantic, that means that we've got an active Atlantic jet and basically a low pressure train that will extend from the North American continent with that gradient, temperature gradient is quite substantial. And I'm not saying that this is a December 13 coming up, but you can see quite a similar resemblance here with the shots of Arctic air driving southeast into the eastern side of the United States. That then increases the strength of the jet over the Atlantic and then swings areas of low pressure towards the west of Europe here. So this is, like I say, over the next 5 days, according to GFS Ensemble. So if we look at the ECMWF, we do have this current situation. So an area of low pressure that is going to be passing pretty close to the northwest. Pressure, according to the ECMWF, is down to around 961 millibars here, but you can really see the pinching together of the isobars here, indicating some very strong gusty winds through the overnight period that may actually lead to a little bit of minor damage. We will wait and see what happens. But if we put on the wind gust chart here, this is the peak wind gust chart. You can see here that we do have winds that are particularly notable, especially offshore, of course. But as this system then pulls through, we will see winds up through the Western Isles, for example, along the exposed northwest of both Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. We could be talking winds, possibly 75 to 80 miles per hour during the overnight period tonight. That may lead to some minor power disruption during the overnight period tonight. Back to the overview of the ECM, and this system will lead to colder air coming back down from the north as we move through the weekend. We've got a frontal boundary now. There is still an element of uncertainty with regards to this system. Now, the ECNWF doesn't really deepen it and form that area of low pressure until it's moving through the London southeast area of the UK. Then we're left with an area of high pressure. That means we're going to see chillier days and nights, frosty nights, perhaps severe frosts will return again through the upcoming weekend as the colder air slides southwards behind that departing system. Then it's left in place, high pressure builds over the top, and you've got the colder conditions, but sunnier by day, starry skies, frost by night. Then we've got another system coming in during the course of Monday with cold air in place that may develop some snow and wintry conditions. Not a massively warm pattern, it has to be said. Sure, we've got mild temperatures at the minute. Let's have a look at the current temperatures. These were the minimum temperatures this morning, and we're talking about the double figures up in the northwest, mid single figures in the southeast, so a bit of a northwest. An upside down temperature profile is probably the best way to describe it. We did see temperatures of 15 Celsius this afternoon along the Murray coast, perhaps Aberdeenshire as well. These are the current temperatures, so widespread double figures, mid teens in some parts of the East UK, both Scotland and down across eastern England. But generally speaking, it is mild across the board and windy as well. You can see here, if we look at the winds in kilometers per hour, you're talking winds in excess of 100 kilometers an hour in both with elevation and exposure along that west coast of the UK. Looking at the latest radar then, and you can see that we do have some blustery showers rattling in. That area of low pressure centered well to the west of the Outer Hebrides, but that system will whistle its way past through the overnight period tonight. Let's have a look at the UK view then and see what it is indicating with regards to how deep this area of low pressure is going to be, how strong the winds may get as well. But you can see here, this is the overnight period tonight, down to 957 millibars, by the way. That's not too shabby at all, according to the ECMWF. And then you've got the strongest winds probably through the overnight period tonight. We'll have some winteriness over higher ground, and then we've got a squally band associated with a frontal system that will move through. That then will usher in some colder air on the back side of that, and we are going to see the temperatures come down. There's that area of low pressure that will ride across the southern UK. Now the ECMWF, as you can see here, doesn't deepen it particularly substantially, if that's the right term. Then there's that little area of high pressure up and down the length and breadth of the UK through the course of later Saturday and into Sunday. Let's have a look at the temperatures then, actually, and see what they are indicating. So we'll look at let's look at minimum temperatures then and see. So we're talking about widespread temperatures well below the freezing mark across most of the UK, perhaps not quite reaching that down in the south and southeast of the UK, Ireland as well dropping off. I know this is very difficult to see. I do apologise, it's not overly clear, but even as we move Friday into Saturday, yeah, cool but not particularly cold, but then the conditions become a lot more favourable Saturday into Sunday. And do we have anything Sunday into Monday? Perhaps an early dip in temperatures before the next weather system moves in from the west, brings in something a little bit less cold. But obviously we do have some colder in place, therefore we could see some snow. Let's have a look at the snow depth chart. And obviously there's nothing just at the minute, but as that slightly colder air digs in behind that boundary that moves through during the overnight tonight, we are going to see some snow over higher tops. You notice here even parts of the Republic of Ireland, England, Wales, the highest ground may see something, but I think the ECMWF definitely tends to be a little bit overdone. But you can see here north of the Central Belt over high ground, it's picking up on some snow. And as we move right the way through the course of next week, yeah, it's seeing something perhaps towards the end of next week, which is a long way out, of course. But if we look at the winds here, you can see that we are going to, in fact, before we look at the winds, let's have a look at the accumulated precipitation and see what it's indicating here. So obviously west and southwest facing areas are going to pick up the lion's share of the rainfall, less in the way of rain. So this is all the way out to the 4th, so next Thursday, 4th of December. Western areas, like I say, is going to catch the biggest amounts of rain. Not an exceptionally wet pattern, but nevertheless, we are going to pick up, over the next couple of weeks or so, we are going to pick up perhaps a couple of 100 millimeters in the very wettest places. This takes all the way to Friday the 12th of December here, if you notice. In terms of winds, as promised, this is the winds expected through the overnight here. So I'm assuming the blacks represent somewhere in the region of 120, 130 kilometers per hour. You can see here, strongest winds obviously the northwest of Ireland and the UK. Let's quickly put on the Met model here and see, because you can tend to have a little bit easier to see temperature, wind speed, etc. We'll put on, first and foremost, we'll put on the pressure chart to see what it's showing, both with that southern system and the system passing to the northwest through the overnight period. So let's look at mean sea level pressure, and let's go through the course of tonight. Pressure is dropping into the 960s in millibars here to the northwest of the UK. So this is into the early portions of tomorrow. Yeah, you're talking generally kind of 970s in millibars across the far north, over 1,000 millibars down across the far south. Let's put on, no, let's continue and see what it's indicating with regards to that feature passing across the southern UK. Is it showing anything notable? Now it's showing, notice here that the track is a little bit further north, slightly deeper, wet and windy conditions, and you notice here it's passing through South Wales into the Midlands and then exiting around about the Humber estuary, and then that clears out, and then we've got the lower pressure replaced by higher pressure. Let's have a quick look then at temperature. In fact, no, sorry. Let's have a quick look at the wind gust potential here off the Met model and see. It's a little bit easier to see figures. So this is through the overnight tonight. You're talking about 70, 80 mile per hour gusts, both over the Outer Hebrides as well as the western mainland. 70 plus mile per hour, pretty good bet, I would say. 80 mile per hour gusts, very possible along that west coast according to this model here, and then the winds start to drop off through the weekend. Let's have a quick look at the 2-meter temperature anomaly, or actual temperature, should I say. I'm looking at the lines pretty well tonight, aren't they? So the temperatures do come down through the overnight tonight as colder air digs in, but it's really Saturday into Sunday, so chilly-ish into early Saturday morning, and then as we progress through the course of Saturday, we're talking about low single figures quite widely, and then with the clear skies and light winds, you are going to see the temperatures dropping pretty sharply Saturday into Sunday. So back to the overview then, and I want to quickly rattle through over the next wee while, and then we'll look at the things that are going on up in the stratosphere, because I've got a couple of interesting comparisons to show you, and conscious of time as well. But let me see here if I can go back to the weather charts. Let's zoom out. So again, back to the ECMWF. We've got areas of low pressure moving through, the main low passing to the north, a secondary feature developing along the bottom of that boundary, the base of the trough. Then we've got another system moving in during the latter half of Sunday into Monday, bringing some fairly messy, wet and windy conditions. But notice that low pressure dominating the pattern, then more systems coming in off the Atlantic. So we've got a fairly active pattern, it has to be said, right the way through till close to mid-month here. Now, if we look at this chart, this tweet here by Christian, the MJO, so obviously I've made mention that we're in a strong phase 6. It's expected to continue into phases 7, possibly into phases 8. Those are prime phases to encourage high latitude blocking, forces the jet to weaken and dip further south. Generally a colder, favourable pattern for colder weather. But the problem is that this strata warming is a reflective type. It actually can encourage a stronger jet across the Atlantic, and that is exactly what we're seeing. Remember, there's always this lag of 10 to 14 days, both with the strat warming as well as the MJO. Both are kind of working against one another at the moment, so you've got a constructive interference leading to very high uncertainty as we move towards December. But the MJO, very strong in the Atlantic, but propagates rapidly eastwards with temporary increase in the NAO. So we're going to see the NAO becoming, positive. The North Atlantic Oscillation as well as the Arctic Oscillation is going to go positive, and the transfer of eddy momentum. This means at the end of the CW towards the first week of December, with a wave 2 pattern in the mid-stratosphere and a decrease in angular momentum. This is the key take home. Angular momentum is stronger with this type of stratospheric warming that's taking place. But the situation showing the end of this reflective event, so in other words, this reflective stratospheric warming event, which has increased angular momentum with the absorption of Rossby waves in a drop of the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation. So we should start to see a decrease in angular momentum. This is what I'm taking from this here. Hopefully I'm right. So towards mid-December, there could be a new drop in the zonal winds at 10 HP. I remember I showed you in yesterday's video another deceleration of the winds towards the run-up to Christmas with the upward propagation of Rossby waves here. So obviously the troposphere is driving the stratosphere at this minute in time, and we are likely to see an increase in favorability through the midpoint of December onwards here. I wanted to show you this here because there is an element of negativity when you look at this. Now, this is the 50 millibar level within the stratosphere, and you can see that we've got this warming taking place here from the eastern side, far east of Russia, across the top and into North America. Remember, we've got this positive PNA pattern at the minute here, which drives this ridge up into the Gulf of Alaska. Alaska itself drives cold air into the eastern side of North America, increases the thermal gradient, increases the strength of the jet, and with the low pressure, not high pressure, but low pressure over Greenland, Iceland, and towards the UK, you're then sending all that energy that is being driven by this ridge over the North Pacific. You're driving all this energy and clash of air mass into the UK and Ireland. That tends to lead to stormy conditions. Now, if we continue to play through, so this is a lower portion of the stratosphere, so you tend to have a little bit more of a mirror reflection down into the troposphere and the 500 millibar pattern. This here, by the way, in my opinion, is not particularly favourable when you've got blocking on the North American side. This tends to favour more cold in North America, but when you've got this cold pool to the north of Europe here and ridging down towards the Mediterranean, that tends to lead to more of a positive NAO signal here, and therefore not a great situation if you're looking for Greenland blocking, beast from the east, etc., etc. I'm not overly keen on this look within the 50 millibar level up in the lower stratosphere. And if we continue to play through all the way out to what, day 10 from now, you can see that reflection here with the high, the warmer anomalies here on the over Alaska, the colder anomalies to the north of the Ural Mountains here, tends to lead to perhaps a negative AO but a more positive NAO signal, and that has a slight look of 2013, it has to be said, but things can change. And you're going to get a little sneak peek at the winter forecast in this little chunk of the video here. Now, the earliest SSWs occurred in 1958, 58, 68, and 2000, which is interesting. This is how the 50 millibar level looked in those years. And this, like I say, we're seeing a stratospheric warming. Regardless of whether it goes into negative territory or not, this is a minor sudden stratospheric warming. If it held in the negative figures, so in other words, easterly winds at 10 millibars at 60 degrees north, if it held that for more than 24 hours, it would be a major sudden stratospheric warming. But this is a sudden stratospheric warming. It is potentially one of the most notable since, well, 2000, because that's when we last seen a sudden stratospheric warming. But you can see here that we've got a similar look to what is going on at the minute here when you take away November 58, 68, and 2000. My point being is, this is what the 500 millibar looked for those Decembers. So December of 58, 68, and 2000, we had quite a deep low to the southwest of the UK and Ireland. Look at the gridging from Greenland up over the Arctic region, and a strong negative here underneath that, extending from North America to Europe here. Now, there is a look back at the behavior of the MJO. So December of 2017 had a similar MJO to what we're seeing now. It was still in phases 4. It went into phases 5 and phases 6 during the course of December and then rotated eventually into phase 7 and 8 and 1. 2000, we had something very similar to what we've got at the minute. Let's put on what we have at the minute just to give you a reference point here. So this is the MJO at this minute, and the projection according to GFS, we're in phase 6, expected to rotate into phases 7 and 8 during the course of December, which favors high latitude blocking, by the way. But it's quite interesting when you look at this here and the similarity to 2000. Now, Christmas into the New Year period in 2000, we had the Strat warming at the end of November. We also had the MJO in a very similar state. So there is a lot of uncertainty, but there is a lot of interesting elements to this as well. In December of 2009, the MJO headed through phases 6, 7, and 8, and we turned cold around the 17th, leading to a cold, snowy UK Christmas and New Year. So this was the MJO in December of 2009. So it was leaning more towards those favourable phases. You want to see a phase 7, 8, possibly into 1 for both Greenland blocking as well as high latitude blocking. But yeah, you got a little sneak peek at that. I'm continuing to work on this, and it will be available on Sunday afternoon. So I think I've spoken long enough. Interesting things going on here at the minute. Even if we don't get anything significantly cold, there is a lot of interesting things going on at the moment within the atmosphere, and I'll strive to keep you up to date as much as I can. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow with more. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye bye.